Hi all. So I usually don't work on videos during the weekend on pain of death from Mrs. Godless, but I was approached by a fellow YouTuber with a video I couldn't resist. As a result, I risked life and limb to bring you this video. Before we get started, I also wanted to say a quick thank you to my first Patreon supporter, Ursula Major. I appreciate your generosity. Also, if you're interested in seeing a few pictures of my dogs, you can find them at the end of this video. I promised Lara B I'd share, and never let it be said I don't keep my word. Alright, let's get into this video. Islam isn't really my expertise, so I'm proud to present Amadio, who knows a thing or two about this religion. The link for his channel will be in the description. He has some very cool stream videos with the likes of Logic and Cosmic Skeptic.
Thank you, Godless, for having me. My name is Amadio Dinabo and I am an ex-Muslim.
You're welcome. So let's jump in.
Why would God punish an atheist for being an atheist, according to Islam?
That's a great question. I can't wait to hear the answer.
Some atheists are very nice, kind and helpful. And what about those who worship other gods? Why is disbelieving in God the worst sin according to Islam?
It's sadistic, tribalistic. It's a man-made religion that sometimes highlights the backward, brutish nature that our species is often capable of. Just throwing ideas out there, but please go on.
I was once approached by someone who told me, I'm an atheist. I do not believe in God, but I'm a very kind and good person. I volunteer in many charitable organizations and I give to the poor.
Sounds like a decent human being who simply lacks belief in your deity, much like you lack belief in the thousands of deities that humans have believed in over the course of our history. So yeah, what sort of reason could your particular deity have for throwing someone who sounds like a kind, considerate, ethical human being into a lake of fire, and torturing him for eternity for simply not believing in its existence? More importantly, what sort of mental gymnastics are you going to use to justify this hypothetical atrocity?
So given all that, when I die, will I go to hell? Is this the justice of you people?
You people? I thought we were talking about your God. I mean, I think it's a justifiable question to ask, and I think the answer tells you quite a bit about your religion as a whole, as well as how much influence it has over the adherents of that religion. It takes quite a bit of cognitive dissonance to believe in a deity that is supposed to represent peace, but is willing to burn or otherwise torture people for not believing in its existence. You've basically admitted that the atheists your God is supposedly willing to torture were good people, but I have a funny feeling you're about to throw some religious babble my way that will help you justify your support of a deity. And when I say deity, I really mean the idea your deity represents in this case, because I don't for a second believe in your God, but I'm fairly certain you're about to throw your support behind the idea that it's okay for an entity to torture another human being for simply not believing. And that's a major issue, and one that I think degrades the worth of human beings as a whole. You're willing to support eternal suffering being inflicted on an individual, even decent, upstanding individuals, because they had the temerity to think differently than you, and ask for evidence of your claims. Well, let's hear it. How are you going to justify unending torture?
Just because I don't believe in God, I should enter hell? In response, I told him, let's suppose that there is a large company employing many people.
Oh no. You're about to make a ridiculous analogy, aren't you?
Imagine that one of the employees is a very good person. He's extremely kind and cooperative and spares no effort to help his colleagues at work. He also lends them money and brings treats in for everyone in the office on a daily basis.
Sounds like a good person. So why should the boss of this company drag him into a basement and torture him for eternity? Did he forget to bring in some jelly donuts when he was treating the entire staff?
On the other hand, his relationship with the boss is terrible. He doesn't read nor implement the instructions given to him by his boss, nor does he perform his work duties. His colleagues advised him that he should mend his relations with the boss and start performing his duties, since the boss pays his salary and thereby provides him with all his needs. His response to them is that the boss isn't really there. In the presence of the boss, he stands up defiantly and says that this company has no boss. All the while, the boss is extremely patient with him. He doesn't want to fire him, and in fact, he keeps on paying him his salary regularly, but only up to a certain point. Eventually, he puts his foot down and decides to punish him and fire him. Now,
alright, let me stop you right there. Your analogy is garbage. Let me help you fix it. This employee isn't hired. He doesn't hand in a resume, and although he's surrounded by employees of the company, many of whom tell him how great working for this company is, he hasn't bought into the hype. However, some of these employees view him with suspicion. Sometimes they threaten him, and he becomes legitimately afraid for his safety. A few of them tell him that if he doesn't capitulate and hand in his resume, he should be killed. Others try to cajole him into working for this company, and they tell him stories of what will happen to him in the future if the boss finds out there's someone who doesn't want to become a valued employee. And so, this man eventually hands in his resume out of fear for his life. He doesn't want to be murdered, and he certainly doesn't want to be tortured in the future. On his first day of work, this man discovers that there are lead hands, and these foremen say that they alone speak for the boss. They stand out from their fellow employees because they wear funny hats that symbolize their authority. The other employees are afraid of these foremen, because although some are kind, many of them will not hesitate to ruthlessly enforce the boss's rules. In an attempt to avoid punishment, this man attempts to learn the rules of the company, but each foreman has a different set of rules, and each employee has a different understanding of the company handbook. So the man turns to the handbook and quickly realizes that it's full of contradictions, and doesn't make sense to him. Much of it the man finds abhorrent. For example, many of the rules call for the stoning of his fellow employees, and even of people who aren't even employees of the company. In desperation, the man asks the foreman if he can speak with the boss so he can air his concerns and ask for clarification of the rules. But he's told the boss is immaterial, invisible, and outside space and time. He's told that instead of seeing the boss for himself, he should trust the foremen who run the company. His fellow employees have never seen this boss either. In fact, many of these employees have worked their entire lives for the company. Most of them come from a long line of employees, and none of them have ever seen the boss. Some have dreams of him, some say they can hear the boss's voice in their head, but none of them can provide any good evidence for the boss's existence. The man begins to suspect that the boss doesn't exist. He feels duped, and he now believes that the foremen are manipulating the employees for their own gain. He decides right then and there that he no longer believes in the boss, and wants to leave the company and find work elsewhere. He types up a resignation letter and brings it to a foreman first thing the next day. The foreman frowns, and points out in the employee's handbook the stipulation that employees are not allowed to leave the company. If he decides to go forward with his resignation, the company is within their rights to have him beheaded or murdered in some other horrific manner. However, the foreman stresses, it is his choice. If he chooses to leave the company and is subsequently murdered, it's ultimately his fault. I mean, I can make the analogy more complex, but that's a far sight more accurate than the one you came up with.
How do we evaluate the performance of such an employee?
Regardless of how you judge his performance, torturing him for what you perceive to be his poor performance isn't on the table. As for the people who support this employee's torture,
and people with a messed up ego can do these mental gymnastics to convince themselves they're awesome when really they're just douchebags.
Do we consider him to be a good employee? He is definitely very good towards his fellow employees, but not so with his boss. The same applies to someone who is good with the fellow men, but ill-mannered towards God.
So what you're saying is that your God is so weak it feels compelled to torture people who are, in your words, ill-mannered towards it. I've had a lot of people act badly towards me, but I've never decided to torture them for years on end because of it. Yet your supposed deity feels justified not to just torture someone for years, but for eternity, without end.
He does not thank God for his health, for his wealth, for his mind, nor for any other blessing for that matter.
It seems like you've dropped the whole analogy thing, which is great. It was a thinly veiled way of doing mental gymnastics in order to justify your support of a being willing to torture another human being for acting ill-mannered.
In fact, he doesn't even believe in the existence of God. He considers himself a very good person, but is he really?
Why wouldn't he be considered a good person? Hell, you admitted yourself earlier in the video that they were a good person. Here, let me remind you.
Imagine that one of the employees is a very good person.
But now you're casting doubt on whether or not they are in fact good people. All it seems to take for you to believe that someone isn't a good person is for them not to believe in this boss, even though you have given the boss supernatural abilities and made it virtually impossible to falsify your claims. You're unable to offer any good evidence for this boss, yet support the idea of their eternal torture because they lack belief in this boss.
God allows him a lot of respite and delays, punishing him throughout his life.
What a great guy. How come some people get a few years while others get several decades? Wouldn't an all-powerful God realize that this system sucks? Wouldn't it realize that a book isn't the best method of communicating its desires to its creations?
As an opportunity for him to reconsider his ways. He also gave him a mind so that he could contemplate and realize the existence of God Almighty.
Well, yeah, he gave you this mind to contemplate, but diversity of thought is a no-no. You must come to the conclusion it wants you to, or you can look forward to everlasting torment. Do you not see the problem with the system?
Another important point is that an atheist claims that he does all of his good deeds, such as volunteering and giving to charity, for the good of mankind.
And what's wrong with this claim? They clearly don't believe in your deity, so they're not doing it to please him. Therefore, they're doing it for other reasons, and I see no reason to disbelieve their claim that they might, at least partially, be doing it to benefit other human beings. They're likely doing it because it makes them feel good as well, but I fail to see how that diminishes their good works. I mean, I'm sure there might be some people who do it as a form of virtue signaling, but I don't see how that's any worse than a believer doing it as a massive form of virtue signaling to their God, especially since they're looking to be rewarded not just in this life, but in what they think will be the next.
Not in the hope of reaching heaven, nor out of fear of going to hell. So what is he complaining of then?
Yeah, I mean, why should they be bothered that millions of people worldwide support the idea that they'll be tortured forever? It's no big deal, right? Who cares if millions of people believe that they're not good people simply because they don't think the same way as they do? It's no big deal. Nothing to worry about at all.
He should be pleased that he will not be going to heaven and not be bothered if he is going to hell.
Exactly. Why be bothered by the prospect of being tortured endlessly? I sincerely try not to attack people on this channel, but instead attack the arguments they make. But this video is testing my patience big time. I'm going to skip ahead a bit before my head explodes.
What about those who worship other gods besides the one and only God? And what about those who practice other religions? Don't worry, God will not be unfair to anyone.
That's comforting. We've already been told how, quote, fair this deity is to those that don't believe in him. I'm sure it's going to be super reasonable when it comes to those who worship a different deity or practice another religion.
God describes in the Quran what will happen to such people on Judgment Day. He says,
Brace yourselves!
They will be told, call forth the partners you ascribe to God. So he will give them a chance to call forth their own gods and see if they can grant them entrance into heaven.
Wait, so this deity doesn't know whether other gods exist? Or is it just sadistically mocking those who believed in a different deity? That's its idea of fairness? And what happens if no other god answers? I take it it's at this point that your reasonable, merciful God ushers them to its fiery torture chambers for eternity, right?
The Quran also says, it will be said to them, where are those you worship besides God? Can they help you now or even help themselves?
Nah, 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 nah.
So God will be a fair judge between us on the Day of Judgment.
That's your takeaway from this discussion? Because I see it a whole lot differently. Plus, you never explained what happens to these people who worshipped a different god or practiced a different religion.
Let's come to the question of why is disbelieving in God the worst sin according to Islam? Don't you think treason or betrayal are big sins? Disbelieving in God is betraying God.
Isn't betrayal something you do when you break your word to someone? You know, like a verbal or written contract that you've agreed to? Because I don't remember entering into any contract with this deity. In fact, I don't even believe in your deity, and you've yet to provide sufficient evidence for its existence. Anyways, he's about to drop another analogy, and I'm exhausted by the last one, so take it away, Amadio.
Water. You thank me, right? If you didn't thank me, it would be very ungrateful and disrespectful. What if I keep giving you water, then food, then money, and you just take it and don't show any gratitude? And what if I give you water and you turn towards someone else and say thank you to him instead of me? Then I give you something to eat, and again you look towards him and thank him instead of thanking me. That's what disbelievers in God do. He gives them water, food, money, health, wealth, family, you name it. If they worship other gods besides the one true God, they turn to them in gratitude rather than being thankful to the one who has given them the sustenance. Or if, on the other hand, they are people of no faith, they then thank themselves, claiming that they acquired these things.
I really fail to see how is that worse than murder or rape or even child abuse. The reason why it's not moral to not be grateful to someone is because it hurts them and they may need our gratitude. Your God is omnipotent, omniscient. He doesn't need our gratitude. What's the point of being grateful to him? Why does he care about that? And how is that a justification to burn someone in hell for eternity? And God just created those things that you're talking about. He didn't give them to me. It's usually society or my parents or me who provide those things. I don't have any reason to be grateful. That's like creating a problem, then asking someone to be grateful for you solving that problem that you created.
Because of their talents, personal qualities, or hard work alone. But why do atheists so often question believers as to whether they believe that they will go to hell? It can only be for one of two reasons. The first is that he does so in order to fluster a believer, not out of genuine fear of hell nor of hope of entering heaven, because he does not even believe in either of them. Alternatively, he may do so because he is not completely convinced of his own atheism and is trying to find himself a way out, just in case there does turn out to be a God, a day of judgment, followed by a reward and a punishment.
Nope, there can be many reasons to why an atheist would ask such a question. But since we're talking about Islam here, the question is usually asked because it's contradictory to say that Islam is a religion of peace and then telling someone he's going to hell for eternity for not believing in God or for not being grateful to God. And yes, an atheist could ask the question just to provoke a religious person and make him think and help him get rid of religion. And yes, an atheist could have an irrational fear of hell and then ask the question out of that fear. There is no problem with that. But the problem is atheism, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, Atheism is just a lack of belief, so it doesn't make any sense to say that someone is not convinced by his atheism. But I don't see how it's wrong to genuinely want to know if your God is real.
And let me tell you why an atheist thinks in such a way. What makes an atheist doubt his atheism? From a philosophical point of view, the existence of God is subject to three possibilities. His existence may be an undeniable fact, such as Muslims, Jews, Christians believe, for example. His existence may be questionable, such as agnostics believe, or otherwise his existence may be an absolute impossibility, such as atheists believe. If you ask an atheist to put forth an argument to support his beliefs that the existence of God is an absolute impossibility, he will never be able to do so. The closest he can get to supporting his claim is that the existence of God is a possibility.
In order to not repeat myself, I'm just going to assume he means atheists who believe that his God does not exist, and I would consider myself one of those people, because his God is not conceivable, and anything that is not conceivable is by definition logically impossible. It's completely dogmatic to say that something is absolutely true or that something is absolutely wrong. I can be wrong and you can be wrong, and you have to admit that if you are a rational person.
He may exist or he may not exist. So a person who outright denies the existence of God, saying that it is an impossibility, actually believes in something that they have no arguments to back up. Accordingly, he is being arrogantly obstinate. That is why when he questions whether or not he will go to hell, deep down he is scared, because he knows that there is a 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 chance that there is indeed a heaven and a hell.
So yeah, as I said, I have an argument to back up my belief that his God does not exist, or it's impossible for his God to exist. And when something has a low chance of happening, it's irrational to fear it.
We should be able to have academic discussions and debates about matters of religion and belief in a friendly atmosphere. Thank you.
So yeah, we can have debates, but I wouldn't call them academic debates though, because God is a very silly concept. But anyways guys, that's all I have for this video. Thank you again, Godless Cranium, for having me, and I hope that my responses were compelling.
And thank you, Amadio. I hope you all go check out Amadio's channel, and again, the link will be in the description box below. Thanks for watching, take care, and cheers!